Welcome to Real Women Stories. Today's topic is something very close to my heart. It is how women have to go through lots of challenges, especially having to prove ourselves in a very male-dominated environment.
I had to kind of behave, and I remember he said to me at one point, you can only speak at certain times when I'm at the table, and I was like, excuse me?
We are going to be exploring and having a conversation with one half of a power couple. And I'm going to be asking lots of questions as to, what does that mean? What sort of pressures does that pose upon the couple, the person, as a woman, and as a person who holds up a whole family and having to work in business with their partner?
We put the pressure on ourselves to deliver, and we are perfectionists. But like I say, you've got to live up to the name, haven't you?
This is Real Women's Stories. I am currently sitting in the most beautiful setting ever. I'm right in the middle of the mountains. I have got clear blue skies, the sun shining. It's so quiet. I kind of feel like I'm a bit noisy here. So this is just the most incredible setting to host this podcast episode of Real Women's Stories. Today's guest is a wonderful woman called Caroline Davies. I have known Caroline for probably 20 years. I met Caroline through my brother, who has been living in Spain for over 25 years now. And I've watched Caroline's journey. Now, I sort of knew her more on a social level, hanging out with her, going for drinks, going clubbing, also around her family. But the one thing that I didn't realise was that she was this powerhouse of a businesswoman. And as the years have gone on, and I guess social media has been in our lives, I've kind of watched her journey a little bit and seen some interviews that she's been doing, talking about her business. And I knew that she was in business with her husband, but I was really interested in how she navigates that journey and what sort of challenges that they come up against. Because I've worked in business with both my dad and my brothers, but being in business with your husband is a whole different kettle of fish. For anyone listening, we're currently sitting in Spain. We are in Benavis. It's so beautiful and stunning. I wanted to chat to you, and I reached out to you, Caroline, because we've known each other through my brother Scott for many, many, many years. And I think we both watched each other's journey. Yeah. You came here, I think, before Scott. Am I right?
So I came here when I was 18, and I'd lived in Mallorca prior to that. So I was in Mallorca for 12 years. I then went to Scotland to finish my education, and then very much missed Spain, so came back at the age of 18. And I'm now 43, so I've been here quite a long time.
Long time. Hence the reason why you can speak Spanish and I can't. So let's go back, because I think it's always important that anyone that is listening gets a vision of Caroline from when she was younger.
So I was born in Scotland, and my father's idea was to sail around the world. So we lived on a sailing boat until I was 3. And then we had a bit of a crazy journey. We ended up in Monaco. We were the poorest people in Monaco on a sailing boat. It was a bit of an adventure, and then sailed to Mallorca, where my parents bought a ruin, ended up building this beautiful house, and I went to school there from the age of 5 till I was 13. So I spoke Spanish. I learnt Spanish, but I remember arriving at a school at the age of 5 and not understanding anybody, not knowing anyone, not understanding the language. It was really tough then. And I befriended a Spanish girl, and then from then we kind of developed this friendship, and I learnt the language.
And I know the language is different in Mallorca as well, because it's Mallorquian.
Exactly.
And the locals regard anyone who's Spanish as a tourist.
Absolutely.
From working with Scott and setting up sunshine weddings in Mallorca. Yeah.
You know all about Mallorca.
I know all about Mallorca. It's the most beautiful, beautiful island. And the people that live there protect the island, protect their properties, protect everything that they have. So Did you feel that growing up? Did you feel that you were a real Farang when you got there?
Well, I mean, initially, yes. I kind of integrated with the locals because I became, very friendly with this girl who was at school with me, and she happened to be my neighbor. So I very much integrated in the local community. Her family kind of took me under their wing, and we used to have all this, but I don't know if you've ever heard of sobrasada, but that's like the Mallorquin kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a type of kind of meaty pate stuff, and the typical Spanish pan boli, which is a tomato and olive oil. And so I very much kind of grew up with all of that. So I kind of became Spanish or Spanglish. But yeah, I mean, that's how I kind of integrated with the locals, because I became friendly with one of them.
And sort of thinking about your time, just going back a bit when you were in Monaco, you said we were the poorest people there.
I mean, yeah, we were on a sailing boat, and we kind of came into the port amongst all these mega yachts, and we didn't have a place to stay then, and we rented this tiny apartment. And I was very young. I was only 3 at the time, so I don't remember it clearly. I only remember my dad telling me a story about me speaking to one of the kids, and he said to me, "Parlez-vous français?" And I said, Dad, come and meet my friend, parlez-vous français? Because Dad clearly spoke no French. But yeah, that was kind of my experience of Monaco. I don't remember much after that, and we left, about a year later or so. And then, travelled to Mallorca, where we ended up staying for 12 years.
So you were in Mallorca till you were how old?
So I left Mallorca when I was 13. And then went back to Scotland. Okay. I say back to Scotland, I was only really born there. Went to Scotland and was there until I was 18, and then came back to here to Andalusia.
And what was the transition like from being in Mallorca and then going back to Scotland? I mean, first of all, you've got the temperature. You're going from one extreme to another, but you also then you have the language and you have the culture. What was the difference in culture between the Mallorquins and between being in Scotland?
There was a really big difference. I mean, I'll tell you, the biggest difference was I spoke English at home, but I hadn't written in English for years. So I remember when I arrived in Scotland, obviously I spoke English, and everyone thought, oh, she's just one of us. And I remember spelling enough, INUFF, and the teacher kind of laughed at me, and I thought, what have I done wrong? And of course, in Spanish, when you write, it's phonetical. You write what you hear. But in English, it's very different. So I remember having to really learn to spell in English from the age of 13, because I couldn't write, I couldn't spell, but I could speak it.
So it's almost like you had to then go back and re-educate yourself from child, but now you're a teenager.
Because I was Spanglish. I spoke Spanish perfectly. I spoke English, but I couldn't write in English. I could write in Spanish. And then I was slowly kind of having to go back and learn how to really spell in English and write in English.
And I guess so you had to start with your friendship group again.
I mean, I made some great friends, but it took a while, and obviously I traveled a lot, so I was kind of used to traveling and meeting new people and kind of integrating in new cultures. But going back to Scotland was a shock to the system. The way people live, the weather especially. You're not outdoors all the time, you're very much kind of indoors, and it was just a bit of a lifestyle change, a massive lifestyle change.
And so you went to university in Scotland?
I didn't go to university, I went to college. So I went to college there. I finished my A-levels, and then after that was it. I was like, right, I'm ready to go back to Spain.
And did your parents come here with you?
So my parents bought a place over here in Alaurín, in the country again, and came over, and I said, right, I'm going to come over and set myself up over here.
So you arrive in Spain, and a lot of people think, I'm going to come to Spain, and as a teenager, I'm going to work the clubs, I'm going to work the bars, I'm going to be a waitress, I'm going to kind of have the high life. But your parents are in Alaurín, and I know Alaurín, it's very much like you're out in the sticks in the middle of nowhere.
So I was working as a waitress for many years. I started working at the age of 14. My dad had a small pub just down the road from where we lived. So after school I would help out, and I would kind of earn some pocket money by waitressing, and from then I kind of continued doing lots of waitressing jobs after school. During college I did the same, and then when I arrived here I started waitressing as well. And it wasn't until I was speaking to a builder who was doing some work on my dad's house, and I remember commenting on something he was doing, and he kind of turned around to me in a very derogatory way, kind of said, well, you wouldn't know, you're just a waitress. And I remember thinking, well, what's the problem with being a waitress? And I then remember looking through the Sur in English, which at the time that's how you got a job in Spain. And I saw this job for a company looking for somebody to work in real estate. And I thought, oh, you know what? I don't know anything about real estate, but I'm going to go for the interview anyway. And I went for the interview. It was a crazy tough interview, but I got the job, and I was 18 then. And that was the beginning of my career in real estate.
Do you feel that you've always had that ingrained in you because of, I guess, watching your dad? And do you think your dad's had a big impact on your life?
I mean, my dad was always very hardworking. So was my mum, actually. So I kind of grew up in a family where it was they were real grafters. But the real estate element never came into it. My dad was he was a yacht captain, and he worked as a yacht broker as well. So he was in the sales industry, I guess, but not in real estate directly. So working in real estate was very much, it kind of at the time was outside of my comfort zone, and I wanted to really push for something new. And I was at that stage in my life where it was kind of, where do I go next? Let me try this and see if it's going to work. But it was brilliant. I went into it. I love people. I love talking to people and meeting people. I'm very much a people person. So I guess the sales element and the sales training helped and followed. And that's kind of how I progressed in real estate.
You're married now?
Yes.
So you met your husband, Luke?
In real estate.
In real estate.
Yeah.
How old were you?
So I was 24 when I met Luke. And he was working in real estate just down the road. At that point, I was working for a property developer, selling apartments off plan in Casares, which is, again, down the coast. And he happened to be in Sabanillas working for a real estate company there. And his team wanted, he and his team wanted to sell the development that I was working in. So I met him. He was the manager, the office manager at that point. And I met him, and that was it. From the minute we met, it was, he's got his version of the story, which is a little bit cheeky, I can't even say it. Really? So he claims that he took me for dinner so that he could get some more commission.
And your version?
No, my version is, I went out for dinner with a lovely man and fell in love. But yeah, everyone's got a different version.
Well, listen, you're in love and now you work together.
Yes.
So this is what I find quite interesting, because I've worked with family before, but I've worked with my dad. I've worked with both my brothers before. What's it like working with your husband?
It's interesting, actually, because I remember when we first went to Dubai together, and we were working for a company over there. And I remember the guy saying to us at the time, "You two are crazy. I would never work with my partner." And I thought, I don't know what he's talking about. We get on fine. It's absolutely fine. We started in Dubai, and I have to say it was tough initially because he was actually my boss. So I had to kind of behave. And, I remember he said to me at one point, you can only speak at certain times when I'm at the table. And I was like, excuse me, what are you saying? But of course, what he was trying to say is, there's a system here, and you come in with the client, and, I then, come in with the price list and kind of, I've got the final say, so you've got to be quiet. That took a while to get used to, but we kind of, as the years went on, learned to work together, and we've learned what we're both good at, and where he comes in, where I come in, what parts of the business I deal with and he deals with. But it's taken us a good few years to get to that point. And also, being a couple and having a business together and having 2 kids, you've got to learn when to separate that, the business element in your home. And also, if it is coming in, which obviously it overlaps, it's only normal. There's days where the business will, have more of my attention than the kids. And there's days where the kids, get a lot more attention than the business. But that's normal. There's no perfect balance, And anybody who says there isn't, it doesn't exist. But you just learn. You learn to manage it, and you learn to work with it, and you learn to work together. But you've also got to have boundaries in terms of, keeping your sanity and your marriage and your household together. So, it's important.
Can you, if you would, share like one example of a time that was pretty tough between the two of you, and how you overcame that as a couple?
I think we're both very strong personalities, and when we want to get a point across, I'm particularly outspoken, as you know. So when I'm very stubborn. So when there's something that I really feel strongly about, I'll really not stop going on about it. So I think Luke has got a lot of patience. And there's been moments where we've disagreed on things. And we've had to really sit down and literally go through the pros and cons and each get our point across to understand what the better option is for the business, but also for us, because you've got to separate the relationship from the business at that point. You're business partners and you're also partners in life. So you've got to know that when you're having a discussion or a heated discussion about work, that's one thing that doesn't come into your private life. So that's where you've got to really learn to separate the two, which we have. We can have a heated moment and go off on a tangent and then just go, right, it's done.
That's amazing that you can, and I guess it's taken practice, right? Because
It can turn into ridiculous sometimes because of the relationship. Because obviously, if you're in a business meeting or you're talking to somebody else, there can be a heated moment, but you might not take it to that next level, which you can do because you know each other so well. So there's times where it can be a little bit, exaggerated, but we've learned to deal with it, and I think we kind of now know and understand each other, and also know, where he comes in and where I come in, and how better to work, how best to work together.
If anyone here is listening and they either work with their husband and they're going through a bit of a tough time, what advice would you give?
I think it's honesty, transparency, trusting each other, and really, there might be moments where I truly believe that I think I'm making the right decision, or it could be the right decision for the business, and he will completely, wholeheartedly disagree with me. And in those moments, I feel like, he has to trust me or I have to trust him, depending on the situation. So I think it comes down to knowing each other, respecting each other's decisions in terms of the business, knowing that whatever one of you is going to do is going to be something beneficial for the business and for both of you. So I think that there's just moments where you've just got to say, okay, I'm going to back off, and if you really feel like that, I'm going to back you, and you've got to back each other. Believing in each other is also a big thing and a big element.
I do feel that working with your family, though, you put so much more passion into a job that you're doing. Not that I didn't with my other jobs, but when I was working with Craig, it was like, I love him so much. I just want him to succeed. Now, if I took that into into your relationship, like if it was a man and a wife, do you think that's why you've been so successful in building a business?
Absolutely. And I think that at the end of the day, we both want to see not just each other succeed, but the business succeed. So I think we back each other a lot. And I think that in itself, just by, believing in each other and giving each other that confidence, when there's times where you just think, oh my God, you can have really tough moments or tough meetings or tough situations. So I think we've been each other's support. And we've gone through the tough times together as well, where we've argued and we've, disagreed, but that's life.
I'm interested to understand where the drive came from. Also, your relationship with Luke. Was there any person in your life, or sometimes we see or we experience a couple or a relationship in our lives, and it kind of, you think, I want someone like that in my life.
I think we both came from broken families, so the two of us really wanted to make it work. And I think that, but also we just had a mutual understanding. The two of us had, the same passion, the same drive. We liked the same things. It's kind of an unusual relationship in a lot of ways, because we met in real estate. We built a business together. We share the same crazy, loves for tiles and sofas and, construction and all the things that people don't normally, both love together. And I think that that's helped a lot. But I guess we just wanted to, succeed as a couple, and also had the same, the same goals.
And I think that probably stems, back from when we're younger, when we've had to fight for something, when we've been put in situations like you were, where you just feel so vulnerable. And, we talk about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, but you really did it a number of times. It wasn't just, at a stage in your life, it sounds like it continually happened and you continually had challenges, but you have this fight in you that's like this drive and this fight, as we say, not as in fighting, but that you want to succeed in every way possible, and not just in a financial way.
Absolutely,
It's about being this amazing power couple, but also being a great mum and dad.
yes.
And I know that you're very close with your sister as well.
Hmm.
So when I look at you, I kind of feel like if you were, on the beauty pageants, if you had to come in and I'd like crown you as Queen Caroline of Benavis.
I mean, it's been a journey, and I think that the best part about it is we've gone through highs and lows, and we do want to be amazing parents to our children, and we do want to be able to offer them a life where they see their parents working hard. And also, I wanted my sons to see how a woman can build a business, can be strong, can make decisions, but also can be there emotionally for them and, listen to them and understand them. So I think that was also a big thing for me. It's nice for them to see their mum and dad work together, and, not just dad, but mum also. And I think in years to come, they'll respect women in business as well, which I think is a tough thing, being a woman in business, especially in a foreign country where you've really got to earn people's respect, and you've got to, they just immediately assume you don't speak the language. And that's been another struggle that, over the years, although I've spoken the language, you've had to prove yourself, not only as a Brit in Spain, but also somebody that can actually understand, and communicate with them on a level, not just communicate as a foreigner.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is. I think about, me being in business, and obviously I'm doing my coaching, but it's to people that are in England, right? Um, I don't, I kind of think about that, and I was trying to. A lady yesterday, the other day, was teaching me how to order a beer, and I can only remember yo, I, una, cerveza. I can't remember the middle bit. And to actually fluently and eloquently speak in business terms, because we're not just talking about I'm going to order a cup of coffee or a beer. We are talking legal, very, very high end property entrepreneurs that you're dealing with in this country, and banks as well.
Banks,
Yeah.
lawyers, construction companies. You've got to be able to, like I say, communicate and be on a level, not just, well, like you say, not just be able to, get by.
Yeah.
So that in itself is tough. But like I say, thankfully I had the basis of the language, and then obviously the legals and everything followed after that, all of the real estate talk and the construction and everything that came with it.
And tell me the premise of your business.
So we are a developer.
Yeah.
I do sales, so I can find people that are looking for something a little bit special here in Spain, or looking to move over. I work as a buy-side agent, which I started doing recently with a company called Property Vision in London. We collaborate with them, and also with a lot of private banks in the UK who will call me up and say, I've got a client looking for a specific type of property in Marbella, and I will do all of the due diligence for them and make sure that I hold their hand through the whole process and find them the right property. We also deal with project management. It tends to be the clients that I sell to that Luke ends up doing the build for. However, we're also developers, so we're actually about to launch a development in Estepona. We're going to be building 5 apartments 100 meters from the beach. So that is in the next 4 to 5 months, we'll be getting the license for that, and we'll be launching 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, which is great in as much as Estepona itself is a fantastic place, and there's a huge demand for Estepona now. Yeah. So the proximity to the beach, and also the fact that there's new laws that have come out now with rentals. I don't know if you've heard about them.
Is it the tax thing?
So no, they're trying to cut down on holiday lets, in as much as they're trying to take away the tourist licenses, which basically allow people to rent out their apartments. So anybody who's in a community, certain community statutes won't allow you to do that. Right. However, if the properties have got individual entrances, which we will have on these apartments, you, and obviously the community doesn't have any statutes that go against that, people can rent out their properties on short-term rentals.
Talk to me about your kind of future life from here. Where do you see things?
Yeah, I mean, what the future holds. Well, I'd love to continue living here and enjoy life and continue doing more projects in Spain. And yeah, that's the dream, really. I'm living the dream.
You are living the
I'm
dream.
living the dream.
You're living the dream.
Yeah.
Was there any point in your life, like before you got here, can you take us back to a particular moment? And this is part of why I do the podcast, because I know that we do struggle, and I know that you are a powerhouse, but you've created that from the challenges you've been, and we've obviously spoken about you and Luke. Can you remember a time where you just literally felt, I can't do this anymore?
I don't think there's a time that I felt that I can't do this anymore. I think it's more been a case of I've wanted to prove to myself that I can achieve anything that I set my mind to, which I think is that you put a lot of pressure on yourself by doing that. My parents never had a lot of money, so I was a girl in the private school that I remember elements like I never had snacks. I never had, my friends always had crisps and really cool snacks, and, they had amazing clothes. Even though we were in uniform at school, they always had everything. And from then onwards, I promised myself that I was always going to work to get and achieve everything that I wanted. And when I say everything that I wanted, it was little things. Like, I'm addicted to crisps. I love crisps. And I don't know whether that originated from seeing them with crisps at break time and just not having them. Also, I remember buying my first designer bag. It was such a big thing for me. And I think initially I was quite materialistic because there were things that I couldn't have, I couldn't afford. And as soon as I could afford them, it was like, oh my God, and then I realized it was more, you wanted it because you couldn't have it. Yeah. So I think I've been very driven because I've always wanted to have those things that I couldn't have for many years. But then you realize and you learn that actually they're material things, and what you really want is happiness, financial freedom, being able to travel and have adventures with your family and your kids. That for us is the most important thing.
I refer to you and Luke as being this power couple. What kind of pressures do you get from that? Like that terminology, how does that make you feel?
You've always got to deliver. I guess that we pressure ourselves. We put the pressure on ourselves to deliver, and we are perfectionists. But so far we've been able to deliver, and I think that the good part about that, by people referring to you as a power couple, is that the pressure does. I mean, you can't ever get it wrong. You don't want to get it wrong. People do. We're human, right? And you can get things wrong, and sometimes investments won't go right. So far they have, and hopefully they will continue to do so. But like I say, you've got to live up to the name, haven't you? If you deliver once, you've got to constantly deliver.
How do you feel with your friendship groups? Like when they see you together, obviously out of work, because you're still a power couple, whether you're in work or out of work, you will have this persona. Do you know what I mean? Does that affect how people react to you or behave towards you?
We try to keep business and personal life separate, and for that reason exactly, I think that it's important that the people that you surround yourself with are people who like you for who you are and not who you are in business, or what people assume you have. Or I think that that's really important to us as well. We've got a very close-knit group of friends and who we feel comfortable with, and tend not to go into the business side if we can. Obviously, it's nice sometimes to talk about certain things, but we try to separate the two. So our social group tends to be our chill out, have a drink, relax, not have to think about work. And work is very much, where we go into that zone.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you again for sharing your amazing adventure throughout your life. If this doesn't inspire any woman, I don't know what would. I don't think it matters what age you are in your life. If we just take some time to look at what our passions are, and just find that fire in our belly, we can achieve anything, really. We can. My next challenge is learning Spanish.
Oh, you'll get there.
So,
You'll
yeah.
get there.
You know, it's interesting to hear another sort of strong woman who I have known for, quite a few years. I wasn't actually aware of the challenges that Caroline had been throughout her life, and the drive that she's got. And I asked her a question about, when was there a really tough time for you? When was your lowest moment of, maybe you want to kind of give up? And she was just like, there was never a question of giving up. It was just, she just had this drive to move forwards. And that has inspired me even more now, because I feel that I'm at that stage in my life where I do feel a bit invincible like that. I do feel like there's nothing that's going to get in my way now to prevent me from doing what I'm going to want to do with my life. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I know that I have. I mean, I'm sitting in Benavís in Spain, and it's amazing here. If you would like to hear my next episode, my coaching episode of Real Women's Stories, you can catch me later on this week for my next episode of Real Women's Stories.